Welcome back to the Infinite Creators. This episode, I have a lady by the name of Jennifer Doherty. Now, I know Jennifer since I was about 12. Now, when I say I know her, I know of her. And I remember being in school and I seen this older girl and she was a fifth year and she was blind. And I was like, oh my God, like what if that was me? What if I couldn't see? And, there's a part of me that felt guilty that I could see and she couldn't. And then recently I did a hike and here was Jennifer doing this hike as well. And I was like, what? This is incredible that this woman that cannot see is climbing this mountain with me. And then I heard that she'd been to Mount Everest, climbed the base camp. And I was like, holy crap, that is just inspiring. I was like, I need to get this lady on this podcast. And I intended to ask her on that day that she was hiking. And then it didn't happen. And then the next week, I went for a dip in the water, and here she was walking with her friend, and that was my opportunity. And here she is now, so I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Good afternoon, Jennifer. Welcome to the Infinite Creators Podcast. How's things with you?
Good, Ryan. Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you today. My first memory of you was when I started secondary school, so I was in first year in the convent in Buncrana, and I think you would have been in fifth year, so you would have been doing your leaving cert. And I think, like, the first time I saw you, I was like, there was a part of me that's like, oh my God, I feel sorry for that person who can't see, and there was like a guilt in this, like that, I'm privileged to have eyesight, and I never seen you after that, and that would have been, nearly 12 or... Jesus, that's a long 20 years ago.
Time. Yeah.
And I was out hiking. I done a hike for mental health awareness that Jason Black was there, and I seen you. You were out doing the hiking that day, and I was so impressed that you were there too, hiking with us. And I was like, geez, that woman is inspiring. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to have a conversation with her, and here we are today. So, again, a pleasure to have you here, but I'd love to, go back to the start and hear all about your journey, Jennifer, and, I suppose telling us about what happened and going on from there in your earliest memories.
Yep. So, I'm 37 years old now, so I was born 11 weeks premature. So I was obviously really tiny baby when I was born in Dublin, was really sick. I think it was because of too much oxygen, my retina got detached and I lost my sight in one eye when I was 3 months old, just when I came out of hospital. And I went completely blind at 9 months old. So for me, I don't remember, I've never been able to remember seeing anything. So I don't know any different. I can tell the difference in light and dark if it's really bright or really dark. So I used to have a lot of light perception when I was younger. I could tell if a light was on in a room, or like the lights on the Christmas tree. My brother used to stick them in my eyes and say, can you see this? Can you see that? And now I would be able to see them then, but now I can't. My light perception isn't that strong. So I've never been able to see colours or shapes or shadows or anything. So I don't know what any of those things look like. But when you've never had sight, you don't know what you're missing. So I just grew up, as a blind person, leading a blind person's life. I don't know any other difference. So, I don't know anything different. And it's interesting. I think that's really funny that you've that memory and feeling sorry for me. I think that's funny because I don't see why I would deserve sympathy because I don't know what I'm missing. I think it's a lot harder for people who've had sight and lose it because they have to deal with that loss, whereas I've just always been blind, so it's just the way it is.
Yes. Yeah, and the perception, the perspective that I was looking through was like, if I was to lose my eyesight, that's what was making me looking from that angle, and I suppose then it makes me feel grateful that I have it, But as you say, you've never lost it in a sense. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
And going back to, I suppose, growing up as a kid, Like, what were your earliest memories of realizing or that you noticed that this was something that, you know, the challenge that you had?
So I don't really remember when I was really young, you know, finding a challenge or anything. I just grew up. I'm the youngest. I have an older brother and sister, and I did everything they did. Um, you know, they would have went out to play, and I just played along with them, did what they did. I went to play school in Buncrana, and then my cousin Sarah is 6 weeks older than me, so we grew up together. Or 2 months older, we grew up together. We went to school together, so I just did whatever, you know, whatever she did. So I don't remember at a young age it being any different. I remember it being in play school, and people playing with the toys, and me kind of standing in the middle of the floor, and the teacher coming over and taking me over to something. So I probably kind of have a memory of that I wasn't able to maybe go and find things or whatever toy I wanted. And I remember painting in school. You know, they had the painting easel, and standing thinking, maybe not thinking, but not really knowing what to do, because obviously I've never seen pictures. I've never seen. So when someone hands a blind person a paintbrush, like, it was great to include a child and do the same things as everyone else, but I didn't know what to paint because I didn't know what anything looked like.
Yes.
You know, so they're the first things I can think of now that I remember. But the first time I remember it being an obstacle or a challenge, or being told I couldn't do something, because my family always just treated me like everyone else, and I did what they did. But I remember going to, it was the Jet Centre in Coleraine. I was about 7, and they did like ice skating, and I think they did like a play, kind of like them soft play places, or ball pool or something like that as well. And I remember them saying that I couldn't go into the bigger children's place, because I couldn't see because of insurance. So they would only let me into the wee place, like where the babies played. And of course that wasn't going to be good enough for me. So I was like, well, if I can't do that, I'll do nothing. So I just sat and huffed and didn't go anywhere. I was like, I'm not playing in there. If I can't play in the big place, I'm not playing in the baby place. And that's the first time I ever remember hearing any kind of reason why a blind person couldn't do something.
Yes. So that was like the first time that you had an obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said that you huffed. So how was it after that, you know, that like encountering this challenge? Was that like a discussion then that was open with the people around you, or to kind of understand a little more, or did you understand why that wasn't possible?
I don't really remember. I don't remember. I suppose whoever was with me, like Mama and them, would have probably been annoyed as well, because they wouldn't have come up against that before. I remember maybe they tried to distract me and, you know, cheer me up or whatever, but I just wasn't having any of it. But I don't remember, you know, it was never a thing of people feeling sorry for me if something, you know, if I couldn't do something or something couldn't go my way. It's like, well, that's the way it is, just get on with it, you know. It wasn't like, oh, poor you, you're blind and you can't do this, you know. It was just that's the way it is, and, you know, it's kind of unfair, but just move on to the next thing, you know.
So moving on to the next thing, is this something then that you started to become aware of as you like were getting older? You know, being blind, was there any more challenges that you started to feel like, oh, there's things that I'm not able to do, and like, did that affect you in any way, being excluded, or was that something that you felt?
I never really did. Never in primary school, really. I was always very lucky. So I suppose maybe just to mention that I would have went to mainstream school. So I would have been, like, I started school in 1990. I was 4, and back then people who were blind always went to school, like a specific school for the blind in Belfast or Dublin. And I would have had to go to Dublin, go down on a Sunday evening on the bus, stay there all week, and come home on a Friday night. And Mum and Daddy didn't want me doing that, because they felt like I wouldn't be growing up in my town, in my local area, and, you know, as part of my community, and they would only see me at weekends. So they asked, Mum was a teacher in the school, so she asked if I could go to Scoilesagon. The plan was until I made my first communion, and then go to the school for the blind in Dublin, and then I'd be a bit older and maybe more able to deal with it or whatever. So I started school, and just stayed, never left. So I think I was maybe the second blind person ever to complete mainstream education in Ireland. And that was brilliant because it was, it was a big deal. It was amazing that the school let me do that. But we were all learning as we went. The teachers were making it up as they went along. I was really lucky. There was a social worker in the town, Mary Stevenson, and she was able to read Braille for some reason. So she used to teach me it. So I used to go and learn Braille before I went to school. And
what age was that?
I started when I was 3.
Yes.
So, and then maybe once or twice a week I would go out from school, and I had different things. I would maybe go out and maybe get a bit of extra help, or when I was older, training how to use the cane, the white stick. That's a whole other story. So the white stick is like what blind people use to get around, and what you have to be able to use before you get a guide dog. But
Yes.
I just hated it from day one. I despised it.
Why?
I think because it just made me feel blind. It's like, it's so slow, you're moving, you're feeling every single obstacle and feeling your way around it. And to me, it just made me feel different straight away, because I used to just run around with my friends, hold their hands, and when I was older then take their elbow and they'd guide me and I would do whatever they were doing. But then this person would come, try to teach me how to use the cane, and I just felt like I was slower, I stood out more. It was like, not that I was embarrassed to be blind, but it just made me feel so different. So those kind of things were if I had to go out of class for something else to do with being blind, that's when I felt different, I think. Because I was lucky, I was always able to keep up with everyone else in the class. And, we had this mad system where none of the teachers could read Braille, only one. So when I would do my work, if I finished before other children, someone, either my cousin Sarah or one of my friends, I would read what I wrote, what I brailled back to them, and they would write above it and then hand it up to the teacher so she could read my work. There was no such thing as classroom assistants. I didn't have a full-time classroom assistant until second year of secondary school. There was no such thing as I didn't use a computer until secondary school, so everything was done through Braille, and we all just made it up as we went along. And there's definitely things about the education system today that's more accessible for blind people, and there's less barriers. But at the same time, I think I had a great experience because I just experienced school the same as my friends. I did whatever they did. If they were drawn, if they were doing art, I might make things instead, or tactile things, or Mommy would have always, if my brother and sister were doing their homework, I would have when I was younger, I'd always have paper and pencil, and I'd be there pretending to write as well. I couldn't write anything, but I would be there with a pencil, or I had stencils and I would draw, and I had scented markers and I would colour, and all these things that made me as similar to them as possible. So I think really through school, primary school anyway, I didn't encounter many problems or many, definitely not many times where I felt excluded, or you felt different because you had to do some different things, but definitely not excluded, or not in any kind of negative way. I think, it maybe got more difficult as I got older.
Yes.
In some ways.
And from a young age, what did you feel drawn to? What were the things that you really enjoyed doing and or learning about?
Anything to do with animals. I wanted to be a vet until I realised, well, probably can't really be a vet when you're blind. It would be a bit difficult. And then you had to put animals to sleep, and that was the end of that. There was no way I was doing that. I wanted to own a farm. I was always writing things. So I used to say I'd want to write books. I had all these great ideas, and now I'm 37. I don't know what I want to do. It's great when you're younger. You think of all these things. But anything to do with animals, or writing, or I wasn't very sporty. Everyone else in my family is sporty, and I'm not at all. I played the piano, but I did it for years, but I was never naturally good at it, But I loved music. I wanted to be a DJ as well for a while. Yeah. And then I got to secondary school when you're supposed to decide, and I hadn't a clue. But it's funny, when you think about the things you liked when you were younger, and now you realise you still like those things now, or you come back to a lot of those things.
And
that you
what is
liked?
it that you've come back to?
Well, I always love music, more listening to music than playing it. But music, radio. I love animals. I'd have loads of dogs if I could. Um, I like, just kind of radio and documentaries and stuff like that. And I always liked outdoors and walking, and now I'm hiking and just different wee things that I liked when I was younger that have kind of come back. Like when I was a child, like I played with dolls to a certain point, but then I was never like really maternal, and I used to play with dinosaurs. Like I loved dinosaurs and them popping in my pockets and things like that. And farms, anything with animals, like that was me happy.
Yeah. And then that led to, I suppose you just mentioned it there, hiking, and that really impressed me when I was like, Jesus, like that's unbelievable. I was really, really so impressed when I saw you with someone and you were locked in arm in arm, and you weren't just walking up that mountain, like you were marching up that mountain, and I was very impressed. And where did that all start for you? Was it just a case of have you always been out walking with others, or?
So it's a bit of a mad story. So, well, first of all, I've always liked outdoors. Like so I would always walk a lot when I was younger, and then I've had 2 guide dogs. I'm just waiting on my 3rd dog now, but I've always been out walking with them and love outdoors, and we live beside the beach. So, I'd always be in the beach, and when I was younger, I would have, going for walks. Daddy would have took me over the rocks and over, wouldn't have been the flat places you could walk. It would always be more complicated things, or so I was never sheltered or protected, like, oh, watch the hole, watch you don't fall, all them things. Mm-hmm. I was always, so I never had any fear that way of uneven ground and that kind of thing. But I never really hiked, and I didn't realize it was something I loved doing. I was sitting doing work one day. So I work for myself, and I have an audio transcription business, so I type audio for people doing research. So they send me their recordings of whatever their topic is, their interviews or whatever they've done, and I type them up. So I was sitting doing work one Friday, a week before Christmas, and I got a message out of nowhere from Jason Black from Letterkenny, and all I knew was he's from Letterkenny, he's an athlete, he's been to Everest, he's been to K2, and he's like an adventurer, and that's all I knew. So he kind of told me a bit about himself. He said, I know you don't know me, but I've heard about you and some stuff you've done. I really like your attitude to live life to the full and not let your disability get in your way. I'm wondering if we can meet to talk about something.
And was this, so he had heard about your hiking?
No, I never hiked.
So she had never even hiked at this stage? And
I don't know what he heard about. I couldn't tell you. On this day, he hasn't fully said one certain thing, and I couldn't tell you what it was that made him think this idea would be a good idea. Like, absolute madness. So
sorry, proceed.
So I said, right, okay. So this was a Friday. He arranged to come to my house on the Tuesday morning, and I was kind of saying to Mommy and my brother, my sister, like, this boy's coming down, don't know what he wants, having a clue. And I said to Colin, my brother, go on, will you come down with me? Just be there. I said that he's been to Everest. I don't know, if you don't know what to talk about, at least we can talk about Nepal, because my brother's wife was Nepalese, and he'd spent a lot of time in Nepal. So I was like, you just come and be there anyway. And Mommy was there too. So he came to the door, and I had no clue when I opened that door to him what I was letting him in for, who he was, and what the next couple of years would be like.
So when was this?
This was December 2021.
Cool. 4
days before Christmas. So he came in, I made coffee or whatever, and he told us all about himself. And I don't know if you know, anyone that knows him knows a story, but when you hear a story, when he's sitting beside you telling it in his own words, he's got a very powerful story. So he told us all about him, his life, his work, things he does, his struggles with mental health. He was very open and very honest. That was the first thing that we all kind of noticed. And then he said, suppose you'll be wondering why I'm here. I am taking a group to Everest Base Camp in April. So it was a group, like, people could sign up, anyone could sign up. And he said, I'm wondering, would you come? It's a like 17-day trip or whatever, and told us about the trip and what it would be. And he said, basically I'll like guide you and the people there will help you. And there was no such thing as, oh, you're blind, you need to bring a friend, you need to bring your brother, there was no. And I was just sitting listening to all this going, what is this boy on about? And I remember Mommy saying, so are you saying you want to take her to base camp? And that just clarified in my head like exactly what he was asking. And then she went into like mommy mode and she was asking all the practical questions. Well, how'd you get around and how'd you do this and where do you sleep and what do you eat and what? And I'm just sitting there going, I have no idea what's going on. When you have them days that they're just so mad, you like.
What was your initial feeling when this guy burst into your house and says, I want to take you to Everest, when you had done no hiking in your life?
So I was like, at first I was like, is he serious or what? And Colin, my brother, was sitting beside me and he said, I don't know what's going on. He said, I was like, what do you think of this? Trying to ask him quietly. And he said, I don't know. He said, but I'd completely trust him with my life. And I was like, right, well, your brother's not going to tell you that. Because I was thinking, this all sounds too good to be true. There must be some catch. There must be something.
Yeah.
First I was going, oh my God, I'm not going to be fit enough. Like, how fit does he think I am? I'm not fit. I've never done anything like this. And there were so many logistical things, being blind, that my head just had 100 questions. And he was like, what's your gut feeling? What do you think now? And I was like, well, if I didn't have all these things to think about, I would love to do it. If you took all the things I was worried about away, I would love to do it. So he says, right, think about it over Christmas and, get back to me or whatever. And he got up and he was about to leave. And I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I said, I'll tell you now I'm going to do it, because if you leave this house, I'll overthink it and I won't do it. So we just shook hands and that was it. And there was a lot of things that happened. So like he'd planned every bit of it. So he had already got me funding from the Donegal Centre for Independent Living. So that's a place that provides a personal assistance service for people with disabilities. And I have a PA from there. So he'd got me funding. They do this thing called an opportunity fund, and they try and give people, funding to do things with disabilities that might be difficult to do, or, might be out of their comfort zone, or they've never funded anything like this. But he'd been in touch with them. He'd basically secured funding for the trek, and all I had to do was pay for my flights. This was already sorted.
Had he done all this before he even spoke to you?
Aye. But now that I know him, I know his head works like 10 miles ahead of everything else. So when he asks you something, he's already 10 steps ahead thinking of, like...
And how did he hear about you?
I don't really know. There was in DCIL in 2000, I think it was 2012 or 13, I flew a plane, like a dual control plane. So it was... We kind of did it like a fundraiser, but there was like a plane. They had a pilot and dual control, so they would like take off the plane to a certain height, and then they'd let you fly it and land it and all this. So we did this, and they have a big picture of me in the plane in the training room in DCIL. And I saw that and asked them who it was, and I don't know what else. I've done fundraising for guide dogs, and I've done different things, but I haven't done anything like that. I still don't understand it. Like 2 years later, I'm as confused as the day I came in the door, and then it just all went crazy, because I thought, right, I'll go to base camp and do that and that'll be that, but it just hasn't stopped since, and I have no idea why.
And from that moment then, did you have preparation? Did you have a plan, or like how did you prepare yourself for that? And what was the time from the moment he mentioned it to you to the moment that you done it?
So we had about 4 months. So we left at the end of April. So 4 months, and he didn't really set out a plan. Like, he wasn't even in touch with me that much for a while, so it wasn't like he was in touch every week and then touch extra because I was blind. There was just like, he was just like, just get out as much as you can and walk as much as you can. So I bought an exercise bike during lockdown in super value, €79, and best thing I ever bought, because
great value.
That was so good. But like when I wasn't walking with the guide dog and I couldn't get someone to go out and hike with me, at least I could cycle in the house, put on the music, and try and strengthen my legs. because being blind, you can't just go to the hills whenever you want, and so I had to always depend on people to take me out, take me for walks, and so that was kind of difficult because you couldn't do as much as you wanted maybe, and that you were just guessing if you were fit enough,
Yeah. And so that led to your first hike.
Yeah.
And where was your first hike? Tell me about it. I'd like to hear.
I don't even remember. Probably up Fawn Hill or somewhere.
Yeah.
I went up there a bit with my brother, and I don't even know. Probably there, and then so we didn't meet the group. There was 10 of us, Jason and 9 people from Donegal, and we didn't meet up until the middle of March, and we were going 6 weeks later. We met and we had a weekend in the Blue Stack Mountains. We stayed in the Blue Stack hostel. We all met for the first time, and we had 2 days of like 2 25k hikes, and it was brilliant because it was just a real tester of what it was going to be like, and you got to meet the group and see what was involved and do 2 really long, really, really tough days. And like I'd never walked anywhere with Jason until then, and then we went 6 weeks later, so I didn't even know like how fast he walked, how tall he was, how what way any of this was going to work. So he walked with me, and then he just asked the next person would they walk with me, and by the end of the first day everyone in the group had guided me, and they all just took turns, so it's kind of funny because people just get thrown into it whether they want to do it or not, and it's that was kind of a bit of an idea of what Nepal would be like. But I mean, you can't prepare yourself. You're trying to get out and do as much as you can, as much training and exercise and mentally prepare, but you don't know how you're going to be there, until you get there, until you're in altitude, and you just try and do what you can and hope for the best, really.
So that was like a new phase for Jennifer, where you were Jennifer and you did a few walks around, I presume around the town, to all of a sudden this transformation where you're suddenly hiking and you're doing a 25-kilometer hikes, doing 2 of them in 2 days. Yeah. What was that period like for you? What were you feeling? What were you experiencing?
It was really exciting because hiking is difficult when you're blind, because you have to think so much about where you're walking, where you're putting your feet. You have to put complete trust in your guide. But it's a chance for me to get out and forget about everything else, because I'm not responsible for, even when I'm walking with a guide dog, even though it knows the route, I still have to think it's an animal. I always have to be aware, always have to think of where the traffic is, where the dog's walking. You can't fully shut off. So hiking's brilliant that way, and you're getting to go to different places and different hills that you've never been on. Just being out in nature just makes me completely relaxed, even though what you're doing can be exhausting. It's relaxing at the same time. And I met so many, I've met more people in the last nearly 2 years than I have, I'd say, in the 10 before that. It's brilliant, and everyone's kind of the same attitude, the same, mentality. I like it because there's no pressure of having to look a certain way, having to dress a certain way, or you need to put on makeup, you need to dress up. I do all them things. I do them when I'm going to places and when I'm going out with my friends, but they kind of maybe make me feel a bit pressure sometimes, whereas hiking is just, you just go, you just be yourself, and there's nothing, like I said, I was never sporty, so I'm not competitive at all, not one bit, so it's great. You're not competing with anybody, you're just going and chilling, and it's been brilliant.
Sounds amazing. Sounds really, really amazing. I'm really excited to hear more, because 17-day trip, was it?
Yeah, so we did a couple of days in Kathmandu before we got the plane to where we started the trek. So the trek itself was 7 days up and 4 days down from base camp, and we had a day off in between. So then we had a couple of, we had a bit of time in. We were supposed to have a bit of time in Kathmandu on the way back, but we got stuck. That was a whole other story.
You can tell me that story. Where did it start?
So we flew to Kathmandu on the 27th of April.
What year?
2022. Last year. Was that only a year ago? Yeah. Oh, feels like a lifetime. So 2 of my friends, 2 people I know through guide dogs, ended up doing it as well, Eamon and Michelle. So it was lovely to have a couple of people there I knew. We had a couple of days in Kathmandu before it started. The group kind of came together over a couple of days, and we walked around the city and saw the temples. And Kathmandu is just an amazing, noisy, busy place. It's just, in a way, I find that more scary because the motorbikes and motorbikes fly everywhere. They're beeping the horns the whole time. It's so noisy. They've, those big drains where you step over from the road to the pavement, and you have to like step over all these things, and it's just like there's so much going on. Like, it's so sensory, even though I couldn't see it. There's so much. So by the time we had a few days there and we got all our stuff ready or whatever, and then we flew to Paplu, I think the airport is called. Usually people go to Lukla, but Jason does it a different way. So you start lower down. We had an extra 4 days before we got to like the tourist area, so we got to go into local villages that normally people wouldn't get to go. We had more time to acclimatise to altitude and less chance of us getting sick. So by the time we flew there, I was glad to get away from the noise and the busyness of Kathmandu. So it was kind of like two different trips. You had the busy city, and then you had the mountains then.
Very good. What was the weather like?
Started off warm. Maybe Kathmandu was like late 20s when we started, and then obviously as you go up it's colder and you're putting your layers on, and it's warm when the sun's out, and then the sun goes in really quickly, in maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, and then you've on another layer, another coat. Or we didn't get any real extreme weather, so we were lucky enough. The weather was it was cold at near the end getting to base camp, but it was decent enough. We were lucky enough.
So you had a 7-day up journey, yeah. So what did each day entail of? What was a day like hiking Everest?
So you'd get up maybe 6:30. So we stayed in tea houses. So they were they were run by people in the village. That was their homes, and they cooked for us. So there's a big room where everyone would sit and eat with a big fire. And then we had 2 people shared a room, and they had mattresses nearly on the floor, and you slept in your sleeping bag on those. So I shared a room with Laura, who was Jason's daughter, who I hadn't met before until the training, but she was brilliant because, that was a big thing for me. I'm sharing a room with someone. I had no independence. Like, I couldn't walk anywhere. I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't get my own food. I had to depend on people for everything. And this was something I kind of struggled with a bit at the start, or the idea of it maybe.
Is that because have you always been independent in your own environment?
Yeah, I've always been independent. I've always kind of done my own thing. Like, I lived in my own house now for nearly 12 years. I work. I know where everything is. I make my own food. All those things. So to have to ask someone for so much help all the time was going to be tough. And I remember Jason just sit me down and being like, this is the way it is. You're blind, but this is part of your challenge. But this is, you're just going to face it like you face every other challenge. Other people here will have other challenges that you don't have. And that's just the way it is. So, let's get on with it. I was like, right, okay. But it was great because then when I knew it wasn't a bother for other people to do it, then I stopped overthinking it. And I mean, so every night you were staying in a different tea house. You'd get up, have breakfast, hike for the day for maybe 10 hours or...
And would it be a 10-hour straight a hike, or how many breaks would you have?
You'd have maybe like 4, you'd have a longer, like a lunch, like an hour and a half. Then you might have a tea, like a break in the morning, a break in the afternoon, a kind of shorter breaks, like half an hour or whatever. And then the rest of it, you just have small kind of stops along the way for water or whatever. But it was tough. Like, you were up steps, down steps, you were over all kinds of ground. There was no uneven ground, I think, from when we left the airport to we got back. It was just like, it wasn't just up and up until you get to base camp and down. It was everything. And they were staying in these tea houses at night, and everyone was kind of the same sort of layout, and the toilets were like mostly holes in the ground, so you'd go and squat, and I'd be going into the bathroom going, what kind of toilet is it? So someone would describe it for all these things that you never, that were all so different and so out of the norm for, but the people there are just the kindest people. They're so nice, they're so friendly, and once they saw me coming and they knew I was blind, they'd be so happy, and they just were so welcoming. And it was really funny because Jason didn't tell the Sherpas, the people who guide us up the mountain. He didn't tell them I was blind until they saw me, basically at the airport, until they saw me coming off the plane. They didn't know until then.
Yeah.
I was like, how did you not think that was a big deal? He's like, oh, they'll be all right. You know, he didn't make a big deal about anything because he didn't want me to be treated any different. But they were all brilliant. Everyone was just so nice. And then we had a day off, which a lot of people wouldn't get, you know, if they go the more traditional Lukla route. So we got to visit a monastery. We got a special blessing, which is really nice, really emotional, but it was lovely. We got to visit a local school, so we bought copies and pens and pencils and delivered them to the teachers for the children, and, you know, 6 months worth of stuff. So it was lovely to see the school and, you know, see that kind of side of it as well. So the whole thing was that, you know, you're kind of trying to see, you're not just going to hike, you're going to see the area that you're hiking in, the culture, how the people live, and hopefully try and give back to the people in some way as well. So that side of it was really special for me as well.
That's amazing. Sounds like quite the experience.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like when you reached base camp?
Base camp was probably my worst day.
Why?
Because
did you want to go on to the top?
no, definitely not. I think we were just so tired. A couple of people kind of weren't feeling well, and the day after as well. So when someone in your group isn't feeling well, it kind of, you know, you're thinking about them and you're a bit worried about them, and everyone was just tired. And I think I didn't really think it would be emotional, but we got there and everyone was hugging and one person started crying, and then everyone was crying, and I was like, I'd have been the person going, I'm not going to cry, but I just wasn't kind of expecting that. And then so the whole thing with Nepal that I didn't mention was my sister-in-law's Nepalese, and Mama and Daddy were going out to visit her family, and they booked flights to Nepal, and Daddy had cancer, but he'd been doing okay or whatever, but they decided he'd just have a checkup before they went. Unfortunately, he wasn't well, so they were supposed to go in December 2019, and they ended up cancelling their flights, and he passed away 3 months later. So, like, when Jason came to the house, he didn't know any of this. He didn't know our family had any connection to Nepal. So right away, there was something really special about the whole thing, and, you know, I kept thinking, how has this all happened? How is this happening? How am I here? You know, the whole trip went perfect, but I kept thinking, you know, why it's just mad how things happen. But I had a real kind of sense of Daddy kind of being there, or overseeing it all in some way. And when we got to base camp, I was just thinking of him so much that day, and it was the first day it just dawned on me, like, when we came back, I couldn't ring him and tell him what it was like. And I remember not even wanting to ring anybody, and everyone sent messages saying congratulations, well done. And I think I rang my nephew because I knew he talked to me for a minute, and then he would be like, oh, I'll see you later, talk to you tomorrow. So I knew I wouldn't have loads of questions to ask and answer. And I don't know, I think I didn't really think about all that before, but just that's what made the day so emotional. And then Daddy used to always buy me Yorkies from when I was really young. And even like as I got older, if I got a bar, if someone got me a bar in the shop, it would be a Yorkie. Even if I didn't want one, they just automatically buy a Yorkie. So I got 2 Yorkies and took them to base camp. And we ate them when we were there, and we got pictures. So I think it was just this thing that I had this Yorkie, and I had this in my head that I was going to eat it at base camp. And I had his memorial card with me and his medal, and we got that blessed on the way up. And I think I just wasn't ready for all that. But no, it was a great achievement to get there and, you know, see the place and say you've been. But the whole thing, like, I couldn't say I didn't have one highlight, or I couldn't say one thing was better than something else. You know, the whole trip was amazing, really. And I just think I was so lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah. Lucky and brave. Very brave,
Stupid,
Jennifer. You know, it's admirable what you've done. You know, like, to not have one of your senses, one of the most important senses we have, our eyesight, and to not let that hold you back, like, that's incredible. Like, absolutely incredible.
I think I've always been lucky in the people I've been around. So, like, from my family, from, when I was so sick when I was born, like, my family, my parents were just like, well, she's alive and she's okay. So, we're not going to. And apparently, like, mommy wanted to go back to work, and my auntie said no, or she didn't want to go back to work. She wanted to stay off work and watch me. My auntie said no, because you'll wrap her up in cotton wool and you'll spoil her and you won't let her do anything. So it was kind of a lot of like just treating me the same as everyone else when I was growing up, and I never felt sorry for myself because, well, why would I? But I was never allowed to, and I've always had people around me that supported me and never told me I couldn't do things. My friends, like teachers, people in jobs, people in, getting a guide dog, and just so many people that have always been supportive. And I have the PAs, the personal assistants, and they help me to, just get out and do things independently. So I had all these people, and then for someone like Jason to come out of nowhere and be that same level of like really strong support for no reason. Do you know, when your family and friends do it, or someone when it's their job, it's different because it's just different. But for someone to come out of nowhere and decide this is a good idea, and then since then, like, you talk to him and he'd just make you think you can do anything, or if he'd be like, anything's possible. And if you say you couldn't do something, well, why not? Why couldn't you? And he would convince you that you could. Lots of people never get that opportunity, or they don't know people like that. So I'm just so lucky that I've been able to be around all the right people.
Mm-hmm. It's inspiring to say the least. And like, there are so many people out there who, have the ability to see, and, they don't take themselves walking, or they don't take themselves hiking. And yet here you are, limitless, you're still pushing yourself regardless of, not being able to see. It just shows, for me, I see you, and I see the human potential, and I see how, nothing can hold us back once we put our mind to it, and once we believe in it, and of course once we have the right people around us, which is what you talk about, which is amazing. You seem to have a really good family who, haven't treated you differently.
Yeah.
And I suppose, as you say, you're very lucky for that. But has that stopped there? Like, what has been the change for Jennifer after Mount Everest? Like, coming home, were you the same person, or were you? Has anything changed?
It's funny, if you asked me that 6 months ago or 9 months ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you. I kept saying something's changed, but I don't know what it is. I still don't really know, but I think it's just given me way more confidence. I didn't know I needed, not that I was that confident, but I didn't really have that belief in myself. Like, well, as far as hiking goes first, so when I came back, I did, I've just finished Ireland 7 summits, so the highest 7 peaks. It's highest 7 mountain ranges in Ireland. So we did one a month for 7 months.
When was that?
Started in March in the Wicklow Mountains, and then ended in Donegal in the Seven Sisters in September. Excuse the language, I call them the 7 bitches, because they were horrendous. I said that day was worse than any day in base camp. Like, it was really horrific.
So you do the 7 summits over what period of time?
So you do them over 7 months. You do one a day. So like a Saturday hiking. So it could be an 8-hour hike, a 10-hour hike, or whatever. So it's the 7. So you could be taking in, like, the 7 Sisters, obviously 7 mountains. Some of them you could be taking in 4 or 5 mountains on one day. So
you said you'd done them from March to September. So there's 7 summits.
One a month for 7 months.
One a month for 7 months, yes.
So there's a group of people, so you can kind of, they're doing it again next year, so you can kind of join in and out. You can do 1 or 2, you can do like a day, or you can go for all 7.
Yeah.
So Jason told me, I saw it online, I was thinking, it'd be nice to do that, because I don't want to lose all this fitness and all this kind of, not do anything now. So I asked him, could I do 1? And he said, you'll do them all. For him, I'd say they're all or nothing. Like, it's, yeah. So we did them, and you get a medal at the end. And so I've done that, and I cried about it when I came back a couple of weeks ago. It was just so fast and so hard. I thought my legs were actually broke.
Mm.
And then 2 days later, I signed up to go to Kilamanjaro next June.
What?
So,
That's
you know,
amazing.
I never would have thought I'd have the confidence to do any of those things. And I suppose if we're talking about hiking stuff, if he says, I think you can do something, I kind of believe him a bit more. Whereas before I didn't really, and I'm like, I don't have a clue, but he's a mountaineer and he knows what he's talking about. So, you know, I'll just kind of go with what he says. So I think it's made me more confident. The experience of Nepal has made me think about, so I was back in Nepal there in February, but it's made me realise how lucky we are and how, you know, we take so much for granted here, and we have so much in Ireland. Like we always want more. We think we'll be happy when we have this or we have that, or, you know, sometimes we're so materialistic and really we don't need half the stuff we have, and we're so lucky. And it's just made me think a lot about that and what, you know, the importance of having stuff. It's not really that important, you know. It's kind of changed that kind of way, and it's, I don't know, it's made me think about different things. Like I'm thinking now about my job and what I want to do, and it's changed something in me. I don't fully know what, but it's definitely given me a new hobby, and I've met lots of people, but it's, I don't know what it's done. It's done something. I can't really explain.
Sometimes there are no words. And yeah, I do agree that we can be very materialistic sometimes. What is it that, you know, that you feel is important for you in life?
I think that you're content with what you have. You know, that your family and the people you love are content. I mean, if people around you are happy, then that's going to make you happy. You know, I think as well, it's the whole thing's made me aware of kindness, you know, and maybe how much I do for other people or don't do, or, you know, it's made me think about that. Like even things like volunteering, I think we can all do a wee bit more. You know, we can all give more time to other people. We can all, if you do more for other people, you're going to feel better in yourself. Like, you know, sometimes you just get so caught up in your own world that you don't really look at what's going on or what's going on for other people, or, you know, yeah.
I do agree with that. I've come to the conclusion that the purpose of the human being is to do other things for other people without seeking anything in return. And that can be anything. It's just, what are you doing to give back? What are you doing to help? You know, and I think when we fall into that space, that's when we are truly fulfilled, because we see the help, the kindness that we're offering, and we see and hear the, I suppose, the thanks from others, and, you know, that. And for me, so I really resonate with that, Jennifer. I'm really grateful for you to share that too, for someone who's you know, on a different journey to me and doing the things that you're doing. You know, I've no doubt that that's just it inspired me anyway. Like there's so much I haven't done, even hiking, and I like it, but I'm like, I want to get out there and do more, you know.
Sometimes you do more than when you're with other people. Like it's hard to just go yourself and do, like I know I wouldn't have done any of this, but if you've someone to do it with, you'll do it quicker, or you'll say, right, I'm having a bad day, I couldn't be bothered going out, and you go out for a few hours and you come back feeling like a totally different person. You might be exhausted and have sore legs and sore feet, but your mentality just changes. And for me, being blind hiking, it's amazing because people walk with you, and because they're walking beside you, they'll talk and they'll tell you stuff maybe they wouldn't normally talk about, or they wouldn't, you know. And it's really lovely when people trust you, that, you know, that they want to have those conversations, and they, you know, they feel like they can talk to you. And so in a way, sometimes I think being blind, people, like, it's a hassle. People have to guide you. They have to, you know, you have to depend on them for things. In other ways, people will say to me, oh, you know, I've got to talk about stuff today that I never would before. Because, you know, it's nice to be on your own and hike sometimes and be in your own wee world. But when you're with someone else, you maybe have the chance and the space to talk about stuff that you wouldn't normally. So
It sounds therapeutic.
It kind of is. Like, but being in nature is just like, I know things are different for everyone, but our society just pushes like medication. Like, there's so much you can gain from the outdoors, like medication, and doctors and all these things have their place. But like, there's so much if you go for a walk or go for a swim, like sea swimming. I don't do it because I hate the cold, but like, I know people that do, and there's just so much we can learn from that we're not fully using, I don't think. And it's like right on our doorstep. And sure, if you live somewhere like here in Donegal, you're just blessed, really. We have everything. Like, what more would you want?
You're dead right. I agree. Nature is medication to me. It's like anytime I'm having a challenging moment, I'll put my phone down, I'll head out, go for a walk around the water, around the trees, and I just feel better straight away.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, rather than sitting and watching TV, scrolling the phone, numbing yourself,
Exactly.
It's just like, it's so powerful. And I think people underestimate the power of nature, but
Definitely.
If we could get more people like you, Jennifer, I think we could have a better society.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I
feel might have
so.
A madder one. I don't know.
Oh no. So what? So you've Kilamanjaro.
Yeah.
That when is that?
June
next year.
June next year. Yeah.
So you've done base camp in Everest. How far are you able to go up on Kilamanjaro?
So Kilamanjaro was the highest freestanding mountain in the world. So you go right to the top. It's 5,800 and something meters.
Yes.
So that's amazing to be able to say, like, because to go to base camp is brilliant, but to be on the top of such a high mountain, I think is going to be amazing. And I don't know what it is, I've always just wanted to go to Africa from a really young age. I've always been, probably started with The Lion King.
Yeah.
But like, I've always been interested in it, and the animals and the music, and again, it's going to be a cultural thing. Like, you get to grind and make your own coffee, you get to visit the school, there's a whole cultural side to it as well, that I know people who've gone with Jason Black will say, that the climbing the mountain is just one part of the whole experience, so I'm looking forward to all that as well, and just having something to look forward to, having goals, having challenges. I think I work better when I have something to look forward to. I'm better when I have things to do and things to be excited about, and because like, life is hard, hard for everyone. Just everyday stuff can be hard enough, and there's so much going on. And I think if you have stuff to look forward to, it means you don't get stuck in your same thoughts or your same, you've something to work towards. And that's my plan for next year anyway. See how it goes.
So it sounds like you're talking like always having a goal, something ahead of you to work towards.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something really, really simple. It doesn't have to be a big deal like this. I'm just going here because I know if I take a break after doing everything, I probably might never go back to it. But so I'm just thinking I want to keep doing something next year. And, for me being blind, I can't just join any trip and go, decide to go on a trek or a tour. Like, I would never have this opportunity. So I'm going to take it when I can get it. And turns out I'll know someone on this trip, but if I didn't, I could still go anyway. Do you know what I mean? And it wouldn't. So to have those kind of opportunities that I never ever had before, I used to always think I'd love to be able to travel more, but I can't travel unless someone I know is going to take me. So yeah, it's great for me to have. But your goal can be anything. Your goal can be what you want to do in the next week, or
It can be.
It just
can be small.
Doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be a big mountain.
No, but I think just having something, even if it's just a small goal, and that small goal could be somebody even going for a walk.
Exactly.
Someone who doesn't walk, or who's maybe self-conscious about maybe their weight or their fitness. And I think as long as you have something. Is there anything that you haven't experienced that you would like to experience, that you feel now you've climbed, the base camp, Mount Everest, you're going to do Kilimanjaro? there anything else you feel that you would like to explore?
Good question. Not right now. I can't think of anything. But I mean, I never thought I'd want to do any of these things. So I could get an idea, out of nowhere and think I'd love to do that. I don't have, places I'd like to go, like countries and things I'd like to, maybe places I'd like to go, but not really a big. I don't really have like a bucket list of things or whatever. But sometimes that's good too, because you don't think you want to do these things, and then you're surprised by how much you like them, or what you can do. But no, I know Africa's kind of always been one. We didn't intend climbing Kilamanjaro, but Africa's just always been a place that's kind of been in my head. So that'll be good.
Yes, but I imagine your attitude and your approach to something that you haven't done before is like a lot different to what it would have been.
I'd say it is, because it kind of gives you a baseline. Like even the 7 summits, the very first day, Jason always does a talk before each one, just talking a bit about nature and outdoors, and just a wee bit to kind of motivate everyone. And he introduced me at the start, and he said I was his friend, and we went to base camp, and I was blind, and I was walking with him, and I said, did you really have to tell everyone? Like, did you really have to tell 80 people that I'm blind and who I am? And he said, yeah, I did, because now they know that you can do this, and they won't feel sorry for you, and they know if you've been to base camp, And at the end of it, I knew what he meant, because when people know you can do something, they kind of look at you in a different way, maybe. So for me, even it's kind of my thing. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to do something that's hard, I'm like, well, I've done base camp, can't be that hard, And they're like, as you say, it could be just the simplest things. Like I'll probably be going to get a guide dog in the next, I don't know, few months. Even though I've done it twice before, it's going to be such a big deal. Mentally, it's going to be a big, whole new change again. But I'm probably mentally stronger to deal with things than I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, or, So I definitely think putting yourself out of your comfort zone, even if it's terrifying, makes you mentally stronger for other things that happen in your life, whether it's just simple, like everyday things, family things, grief, so many things that people deal with. If you're in a good, like we always talk about mental health, like, as in poor mental health, but I think noticing what makes your mental health good is just as important, because when it's good, it's good, and then when it's not, you kind of notice, and you're like, right, how can I improve it before it gets worse, instead of always just waiting for things to be bad.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to having, a practice that at least tries to bring you back into feeling good or feeling balanced. And, we talked about it, nature is one of them things that, for me anyway, is really good at bringing me back into balance.
Nature and music and the dog. Like when you get up in the morning, you come down the stairs and the dog is happy to see you, or you go outside, you go somewhere and come back, and the dog's just like, yes, you're back. Like no human would be that excited to see you ever. And it's just the best thing, because it's like, someone loves seeing you that much, and you just can't help smile. Like if you're in a bad mood, they just take you out of that, because they live in the moment so much. Like they just take you out of whatever form you're in and just make you laugh, because sometimes you kind of need them things. Or I think being around children, or just anything that makes you feel good.
I imagine that you have heightened senses because you cannot see. Is that something that's true to you, or?
Either probably it's not. Some people would nearly think they're like superhuman and they're better. It's not that they're better, it's just that I concentrate on them more. So like I know where you are now from my ears, not from looking at you, or I know where, like say where the window would be in this room from whatever light I can see, or obviously your sense of touch is so so much. You need your touch for everything, so you do definitely concentrate on them more.
And so like, does that give you the ability to, like, I'm imagining that you can, although you do not see, but you can see within your mind through all the the sensories, what you're experiencing through heightened sense to really give you a solid, I suppose, and like a really good sense of where you're at in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think your senses do, like, but then I think your gut, like your gut is one that we just ignore a lot. I think your gut and your intuition, and I have a really strong sense of if I know something feels right or not, or you know straight away. Like, we think if you feel nervous, you feel it in your tummy. You feel there's so much things there straight away that we don't pay attention to because we're thinking of our heads. We're thinking what we're thinking about rather than what we're feeling, and we're missing so much of that already. If you learn to kind of trust your gut more even before your other senses.
Yeah.
You might see something and be like, oh, I don't like that. Or I always laugh. People do it with food. Oh, I couldn't eat that. I don't like the look of it. I'm like, well, you don't like you're not eating with your eyes, like you're eating with your mouth. So if you taste it, you might, you might realize you like it. Like, or say someone speaking. Like, I'm not saying. People ask me what's my favorite thing about being blind. I always say that I can't judge people as quickly. Not that I can't judge people, because I probably do, and I can by the way they speak or whatever. But you can't look at people and judge them straight away by how they look, because so much in the world is based on looks and what's right and what's wrong. And so I think I'm lucky I can't do that. But like, you can listen to someone speak or look at them and you've formed an opinion of them straight away before you've ever got to know them, or before you've So I think we just go straight away with what's obviously in front of us sometimes, and we don't take time to think about people deeper down on deeper level, or our gut feelings about something, or and I have no idea if that's what you just asked me, but anyway.
No, it's all relevant, and like, I do understand about the judgment, and sometimes we're just so conditioned that we don't even realize that we do it. It's just the way society is. But when we become aware of that, at least, because a lot of people do judge with their eyes. They see somebody, what they're wearing, their style might be different to what everybody is wearing, and what I call the sheep, because a lot of people follow people. So if you're not the sheep, if you're the shepherd who's changing and going in a different direction, you're seen as, I suppose, a black sheep, when really you're just falling into your own way and your own style without caring what other people think. But I think if people can learn to judge less or not at all, they can bring a new level of happiness and peace to themselves, Jennifer.
Definitely, yeah.
If you were to speak to the younger Jennifer, or to meet someone else who is blind and young and about to go on the journey that you've went on, who are maybe 4 or 5, what would you say to them? And they don't, they don't even have to be blind. I just know that there's another challenge there without your sight. But seeing what you've done now and knowing what you're capable of, like, what would you say?
That's a good question. I think if you could, I know you can't when you're younger. It's hard to tell people just not to worry so much, when you're young anyway, but when you're blind as well, like, it's so easy to just analyze everything or think like you feel different because you can't see, and what will people think of you, and what it's a difficult question, because I think so much of it is circumstance. Like, I know you make your own luck, like a lot of it is you make, but a lot of it is the people you're around. And I just think if I could tell younger people to just stick to what they believe in more, stand up for what you believe in and what you think is right, what you feel is right, instead of doing what you think you should do. Like, there's lots of times I don't regret anything, but there's things I did with maybe studying, or like courses or things I think maybe I could have did different, or I could have, but if if something feels right at the time, you might look at it after and think, why did I do that? But if it feels right at the time, go for it, because there's always going to be good that comes out of it, because it felt good. It felt right, and you learn from everything you do. We think when we're younger, if I do this now, this is me forever. Everything is learning. You're never too late to change or learn or grow, or so that whole overthinking, overanalyzing, well, I still do it now, but not as much. But I wish you could teach people not to do that so much, but you can't. That's impossible. That probably comes with age and experience, and but just to be able to stand up for yourself and fight. Because when you have a disability, like, in some ways I think being blind is one of the easier ones, but you're always going to have fights and battles, and nothing's going to be straightforward. But if you just sit back and take it all, you won't go anywhere. Life's unfair. It's unfair to everyone, but if you feel sorry for yourself, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Very good. Jennifer, you are an inspiring woman. I am so grateful that you have agreed to come on and have this conversation with me. You really, really have demonstrated, the power of the human, regardless of our disabilities or the challenges that we're faced with, and it's just so inspiring. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
We will catch up again.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a beautiful conversation with someone who shows the potential of the human, even if you have a disability, whatever that may be. She hasn't let that get in the way of her doing things that your average human wouldn't even do. Going to Mount Everest, like, in the space of 3 months, because someone put that challenge to her. It just shows you the mental strength of this woman and our capability of what we can do once we put our mind to it. She is a woman full of knowledge and wisdom, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and it was just really, really inspiring. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please press subscribe and you'll get all the notifications on each release. So I want to thank you once again for listening to The Infinite Creators, and I ask you to remember that you are the infinite creator.